Young man saves beautiful CEO by jumping into the ocean. Days later, they discover he's an army combatant. The waves crashed violently against the rocks of Miami Marina when Ashley Williams felt the ground vanish beneath her feet. The strong winds sweeping the Florida coastline that Sunday afternoon had turned what should have been a relaxing stroll into a nightmare. The 32-year-old businesswoman, who ran one of the state's largest corporate event production companies, never imagined her walk along the shore would end with her fighting against the icy ocean waters. The high heels she insisted on wearing, despite her best friend's advice, slipped on the wet pier. Ashley screamed as she realized she was falling, her hands desperately grasping for something solid. But it was too late. Her body hit the water with a dull thud, and the current immediately began dragging her away from the shore. Salt water flooded her lungs as she struggled to swim back to the dock. The blue silk dress she had chosen especially for her business lunch became a dead weight, clinging to her skin and making every movement harder. Panic set in as she realized her strength was fading fast. That's when she saw a male figure speeding toward her through the water. The young man, who looked to be in his mid-20s, swam with perfect technique, cutting through the waves. Like a fish, his well-defined muscles worked in sync, each stroke bringing him closer to her with impressive efficiency. "Stay calm, I've got you!" he shouted, his firm voice cutting through the noise of the waves. Ryan Miller had just left the gym near the marina when he heard the cries for help. Without a second thought, he pulled off his white t-shirt and dove into the turbulent water. His trained reflexes kicked in automatically, as if his body knew exactly what to do in emergencies. When he finally reached Ashley, she was barely conscious, choking on water with every desperate gasp for air. Ryan wrapped one arm around her, holding her against his chest while using the other to swim back to shore. His muscles burned with effort, but he kept a steady rhythm, focused only on getting her to safety. "Breathe with me, you're gonna be okay," he murmured in her ear, his warm breath a contrast to the cold water. Ashley felt strangely safe in those strong arms. Even in her panic, something in his voice calmed her. She managed to focus on her breathing, syncing with his as he carried her through the waves. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us newcomers out. Now back to the story. When they finally reached the dock, a small crowd had gathered. Ryan helped Ashley up the metal ladder, his firm hands steadying her until she was completely out of the water. She trembled, both from the cold and the shock, water dripping from her once perfectly styled brown hair. "Thank you," she managed to whisper, her brown eyes meeting his for the first time. You saved my life." Ryan studied her for a moment, making sure she was okay. There was something in his gaze that made him seem older than he looked, an intensity that contrasted with his youthful appearance. His dark hair was wet, plastered to his forehead, and water droplets ran down his chiseled face. "Anyone would have done the same," he replied, picking up his discarded t-shirt. "What matters is you're safe now." But Ashley knew that not just anyone would have reacted so quickly or swum with such precision under such adverse conditions. She had grown up near the ocean and could recognize when someone had specialized training in water rescue. "Are you a lifeguard?" she asked, still trying to catch her breath. "Not exactly," Ryan hesitated for a split second. "I just swim well." An ambulance arrived a few minutes later, called by one of the witnesses to the accident. The paramedics insisted on taking Ashley to the hospital for evaluation, despite her protests that she was fine. Ryan offered to go with her, but she politely declined, still feeling vulnerable and confused by the whole situation. "At least tell me your name," she asked as the paramedics helped her into the ambulance. "Ryan," he replied simply. "Ryan Miller." "Ashley Williams," she extended her hand, which he shook briefly. "I need to find a way to thank you properly." "You don't owe me anything," Ryan shook his head. "I'm just glad you're okay." As the ambulance drove away, Ryan remained standing on the dock, watching until it disappeared into traffic. Few onlookers were still talking about what had happened, praising his courage, but he barely heard them. His mind was already elsewhere, thinking about the responsibilities waiting for him. Few people knew that Ryan wasn't just an ordinary young man who happened to swim well. 3 years ago, he had served in the U.S. Army Special Forces, specializing in aquatic operations and extreme rescue missions. His skills had been tested in situations he could never talk about to civilians, moments where the difference between life and death was measured in seconds. But that part of his life was a secret he kept carefully guarded. Officially, he had been on medical leave for 6 months, recovering from a shoulder injury sustained during training. In truth, the physical injury had long since healed. What still kept him from returning to active duty were the emotional scars from his last mission. Ryan walked back to his modest apartment in downtown Miami Beach, his sneakers splashing on the wet pavement. The streets were starting to fill with the usual Sunday evening bustle, families returning from the beach, groups of young people gathering near bars. He observed everything with a trained eye, automatically assessing potential threats and escape routes, a habit he developed during his years of service. His phone buzzed in his pocket. It was a message from his superior, Colonel Parker, reminding him that his medical leave was coming to an end. In 2 weeks, he'd need to undergo another psychological evaluation to determine if he was fit to return to active duty. Ryan put the phone away without replying. He wasn't ready to think about that yet. The apartment he rented was Spartan, furnished only with the essentials: a bed, a small table, an old television, and a few personal belongings. The white walls were decorated only with a military diving certification and a photo of him with his team, taken before his last troubled mission. Ryan took a hot shower, trying to warm his body, which still felt the effects of the icy ocean water. As the hot water ran down his back, he couldn't stop thinking about the woman he'd saved. There was something about Ashley that intrigued him, a mix of fragility and strength he rarely saw. Ashley, meanwhile, was being treated at Bayshore Medical Center, undergoing routine tests after nearly drowning. The doctors assured her she was completely fine, with just a little water in her lungs that would clear naturally. But she couldn't stop thinking about the man who had saved her. Your best friend, Jennifer Thompson, arrived at the hospital, within minutes of receiving the call. Jennifer worked as the HR director at Ashley's company and was practically like a sister to her. Tall and red-headed, with a fiery personality that contrasted with Ashley's more reserved nature, she stormed into the room like a hurricane. "My God, Ashley, what happened? Are you okay?" Jennifer hugged her tightly, her bright red nails gleaming as she checked her friend for injuries. "I'm fine, Jen. It was just a stupid accident," Ashley sighed, still feeling dizzy. "I slipped on the pier and fell into the water. If it weren't for that guy..." "What guy?" Jennifer sat in the chair beside the hospital bed, her green eyes sparkling with curiosity. Ashley recounted the rescue, describing how Ryan had appeared out of nowhere and saved her with skills that seemed almost professional. Jennifer listened, intently asking questions about every detail. "And you didn't find out anything else about him?" Jennifer asked, clearly intrigued. "Just his name." "Ryan Miller." Ashley shook her head. "He said anyone would have done the same thing. But Jen, it wasn't like that. The way he swam, how he knew exactly what to do, it was like he was trained for it." "Interesting," Jennifer murmured, already forming plans in her mind. "You know I'll have to track this guy down, right? I need to thank the person who saved my best friend in person." Ashley laughed for the first time since the accident. She knew Jennifer well enough to understand she wouldn't rest until she uncovered everything about Ryan Miller. Her friend had a knack for mysteries and an impressive ability to dig up information on anyone. "Just don't scare him off, please," Ashley pleaded. "He seemed private, like he didn't want attention." "I promise I'll be subtle," Jennifer smiled, but Ashley recognized that smile. It meant her friend was already planning a full investigation. The next morning, Monday, Ashley returned to her office in Miami Beach's business district. Williams Events occupied the 10th floor of a modern building overlooking the marina, and she had built the company from scratch over the past 8 years. What started as a small party planning business had grown into one of the most respected corporate event producers in the region. Her office was elegant yet functional, with a large glass desk dominating the space. The walls were decorated with photos of events her company had produced: business conferences, product launches, cultural festivals. Each image represented months of meticulous planning and flawless execution. Ashley tried to focus on work, but her mind kept drifting back to the day before. She had spent the night dreaming of turbulent waters and strong arms carrying her to safety. There was something about Ryan she couldn't shake, an intensity in his eyes that hinted at hidden depths. Jennifer walked into the office carrying 2 cups of coffee and a laptop. Her red hair was pulled into a professional bun, but Ashley could see the determined glint in her eyes that meant she had uncovered something. "So," Jennifer set a cup on Ashley's desk and opened the laptop. "I spent the morning doing some digging on your mysterious hero." "Jen, I told you not to." "Relax, nothing invasive." Jennifer raised her hands in surrender. "Just basic social media and public record searches, and guess what I found?" Ashley sighed, knowing she had no choice but to listen. "Ryan Miller, 27, originally from Los Angeles," Jennifer read from the screen. "And here's where it gets interesting. He has almost no online presence, no Facebook, Instagram, or LinkedIn accounts that I could find. For someone his age, that's very strange." "Maybe he's just private," Ashley suggested, though she had to admit it was unusual. "There's more," Jennifer continued. "I managed to find an address record in Miami Beach, a simple downtown apartment. But before that, for 3 years, there's no record of a civilian address anywhere." Ashley raised an eyebrow. "What does that mean?" "It could mean a few things." Jennifer closed the laptop. "But my guess, military. When someone's serving full-time, especially in specialized units, they often don't keep a civilian address." "You think he's military?" Ashley felt a mix of curiosity and something else she couldn't quite define. The swimming skills, how he reacted to the emergency, the lack of online presence, it all fits. Jennifer leaned forward. "And there's one more thing. I found a reference to a Ryan Miller who completed military dive training a few years. Jago could be a coincidence, but you don't believe in coincidences," Ashley finished the sentence. "Exactly," Jennifer smiled. "So what are you going to do about it?" Ashley was about to answer when her assistant, Nancy, knocked and entered with a worried expression. Nancy was a 50-year-old woman who had worked with Ashley for 5 years, knowing every detail of the company better than her boss herself. "Ashley, I need to talk to you about the Anderson construction event," Nancy said, carrying a thick folder. "We have a problem." The Anderson construction event was one of the biggest contracts the company had secured in recent months. A 20th anniversary celebration with 300 VIP guests, including local politicians, influential business people, and media representatives. It was the kind of event that could cement Williams Events' reputation in the high-end corporate market. What kind of problem? Ashley felt her stomach tighten. "The venue we booked, the Crystal Ballroom at the Ocean View Hotel, just cancelled. Our contract." Nancy placed the folder on the desk. "Apparently, there was an AC leak that severely damaged the ballroom. They estimate it'll take at least 2 months to repair." Ashley felt the blood drain from her face. The event was scheduled for 3 weeks from now, and they'd already sent out invitations with the venue specified. Canceling or changing locations at this point would be a disaster for their professional reputation. "How many other venues have we contacted?" she asked, trying to stay calm. "Every suitable place for an event of this scale is already booked," Nancy sighed. "It's peak season, and finding something with 3 weeks' notice is practically impossible." Jennifer stood from her chair, her mind already working on possible solutions. "What if we find a non-traditional venue, something unique that might even be better than the hotel?" "Like what?" Ashley asked, desperate for any idea. "Well, Miami Beach has some interesting cultural spaces. Maybe the Paramount Theater, or even one of the renovated warehouses at the marina," Jennifer suggested. Nancy shook her head. "Already checked. The Paramount Theater is under renovation, and the warehouses suitable for events are all booked." Ashley stood and walked to the window, looking down at the marina below. That was where Ryan had saved her yesterday, and now she needed a different kind of miracle. Her company had invested a significant amount of money in planning this event, deposits for vendors, hiring extra staff, and purchasing custom decorations. Worse yet, Anderson Construction was known for its connections in Miami Beach's construction industry. If this event were to fail, the news would spread quickly, potentially ruining future business opportunities. "I'll need to call Mr. Anderson and explain the situation," Ashley said finally. "Maybe he'll agree to postpone the event by a few months." "Ashley, you know he won't accept that," Jennifer said gently. "He's mentioned several times that he chose this date specifically because it marks the exact day the company was founded. It's very important to him." Robert Anderson was a man in his 60s, traditional and conservative, who had built his construction company through decades of hard work. He had hired Williams Events specifically because he wanted something elegant and professional to mark this important milestone for his company. Ashley returned to her desk and picked up the phone, her hands trembling slightly as she dialed Robert Anderson's number. She had worked for months to secure this contract, competing against much larger and more established firms. Now everything could fall apart because of an air conditioning leak. "Hello, Mr. Anderson. It's Ashley Williams," her voice sounded, steadier than she felt. "I need to discuss some changes to the event." The conversation that followed was one of the most difficult in Ashley's professional career. Robert Anderson listened to the explanation with growing irritation, his voice turning colder by the minute. He made it clear that he had chosen Williams Events specifically for their reputation of reliability, and that cancelling or drastically changing the event at this point was unacceptable. "Miss Williams, I understand that problems happen," he said finally, "but I expect solutions, not excuses. If your company can't deliver what was promised, perhaps I'll need to reconsider our partnership." Ashley felt a knot in her stomach. The partnership he mentioned wasn't just this event, but also a series of future events Robert had promised if this one succeeded. It was the difference between a profitable year and a year of financial struggle for her company. "Mr. Anderson, I assure you we'll find a solution," she said, trying to sound more confident than she felt. "Give me 48 hours to present a suitable alternative." 48 hours, he agreed reluctantly. "But I want a complete solution, not another problem." After hanging up, Ashley sank into her chair. Jennifer and Nancy watched her with worried expressions, knowing how much this event meant for the company's future. "Well," Jennifer said eventually, 48 hours. Let's brainstorm." They spent the rest of the day calling contacts, checking remote possibilities, even considering outdoor venues that could be adapted for a formal event. But every option ran into problems: lack of availability, unsuitability for the type of event, or prohibitive costs that would destroy their profit margin. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, visible through the office window, Ashley finally admitted defeat for the day. Her body still ached from the accident the day before, and her mind was exhausted from searching for solutions that didn't seem to exist. "Let's go home," she told Jennifer. "Maybe a good night's sleep will give us fresh perspective." "Good idea," Jennifer agreed, gathering her papers. "But Ash, we'll find a solution, we always do." Ashley nodded, trying to absorb some of her friend's optimism. But as she drove home through the busy streets of Miami Beach, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was losing control of the situation. Her home was a spacious apartment in a modern building overlooking the beach. Ashley had specifically chosen this place because of the ocean view, which usually calmed her after stressful workdays. But that night, looking at the water only reminded her how close she had come to losing it the day before. She prepared a simple dinner and tried to watch TV, but she couldn't focus on anything except the event problem. Her mind raced through contact lists, trying to think of someone who might have a solution she hadn't considered yet. That's when her thoughts turned to Ryan Miller. Not because he could help with the event issue, but because thinking of him made her feel at ease. There was something about how he had handled the emergency the day before, the calm competence with which he had taken control of the situation, that had deeply impressed her. Ashley wondered what he might be doing that night. If he swam as well as he seemed, maybe he worked in something related to the sea. Miami Beach was a port city with plenty of opportunities for people with water skills. Across town, Ryan sat in his modest apartment, wrestling with his own demons. On the table in front of him was a sealed envelope that had arrived that afternoon via a military courier. Inside were the results of his latest psychological evaluation and instructions to report for a new assessment the following week. Colonel Parker had made it clear this was his last chance. If he wasn't deemed fit for active duty, he would be formally discharged from the U.S. Army Special Forces. It was a prospect that terrified him as much as it relieved him. Ryan had joined the military at 18, searching for direction and purpose after a turbulent adolescence. His natural skills and determination quickly led him to the Special Forces, where he found a family and an identity he'd never had before. But his last mission had changed everything. Unable to discuss the details with anyone, he carried alone the weight of decisions he'd made in impossible situations. The physical scars from his shoulder injury had healed, but the emotional ones remained raw, infecting his dreams and sabotaging his confidence. Ashley's rescue the day before had been the first time in months he'd felt that old clarity of purpose. The moment he saw someone in danger, all his fears and hesitations vanished, replaced by the training and instinct that was second nature to him. Ryan stood and walked to the window, gazing at the city lights spread out below. He wondered how Ashley was feeling after the accident. There was something about her that intrigued him, a quiet strength he recognized from other soldiers who had endured tough trials. He had almost asked for her phone number at the hospital, but hesitated at the last moment. What right did he have to insert himself into her life, especially when his own was in such disarray? The phone rang, interrupting his thoughts. It was his old teammate, Sergeant Kyle Wilson, one of the few friends he'd kept in touch with since starting his medical leave. "Ryan, man, how are you?" Kyle's familiar voice came through the phone. "I'm all right, Kyle. You?" Ryan replied, grateful for the distraction from his dark thoughts. "Listen, I was thinking, you know how we always talked about what we'd do when we left the Army?" Kyle paused. "Well, my cousin has a security company here in Los Angeles. They're looking for guys with our experience." Ryan considered it. Private security work was a common option for ex-military, especially those with special forces backgrounds. It would be a natural transition, letting him use his skills in a civilian setting. "What kind of work?" he asked. "Corporate security mostly, executive protection, security consulting for large companies. Good pay, flexible hours," Kyle explained. "Interested?" "Maybe," Ryan said honestly. "Let me think about it." After hanging up, Ryan sat back down, considering his options. If he was discharged from the Army next week, he'd need a plan. Private security work could be a good option, but part of him still hoped he might find a way back to active duty. The next morning, Tuesday, Ashley arrived at the office early, determined to find a solution for the event problem. She'd had a restless night, dreaming of event venues that vanished every time she tried to enter them. Nancy was already at her desk when Ashley arrived, surrounded by stacks of papers with the phone pressed to her ear. She waved at Ashley, signaling she was on an important call. "Yes, I understand you don't usually host this kind of event," Nancy was saying, "but it would just be for one night, and we're willing to pay a premium fee." Ashley raised a questioning eyebrow, and Nancy covered the receiver. "Harbor Arts Center," she whispered. "They have a space that might work, but they usually only do artistic events." Ashley felt a spark of hope. The Harbor Arts Center was a renovated space in one of the old dock warehouses, known for hosting art exhibitions and theater performances. It could be an interesting option if they could convince them to make an exception. Nancy kept negotiating for another 10 minutes before finally hanging up with a mix of frustration and hope. "They're willing to consider it," she said. "But they want to meet with us this morning to discuss the details, and they emphasized it would be a one-time exception." "Great," Ashley said, already grabbing her bag. "Let's go now." The Harbor Arts Center was in a revitalized part of the Harbor District, where old industrial warehouses had been transformed into arts and cultural spaces. The main building was impressive, with high ceilings and massive windows that flooded the space with natural light. Olivia Peterson, the center's director, greeted them at the entrance. She was a woman in her 40s, with graying hair pulled into a casual bun and clothes that managed to be both artistic and professional. Her dark eyes studied Ashley carefully as they exchanged greetings. Miss Williams, thank you for coming. So quickly, Olivia said, leading them through the main lobby. I must admit your proposal intrigued me. We don't usually do corporate events, but your situation seems unique. As they walked through the space, Ashley could see the potential immediately. The main hall was spacious and elegant, with polished wood floors and exposed brick walls. That would give the event a rustic chic charm. The tall windows offered a view of the harbor, creating a dramatic backdrop, especially at sunset. This space is perfect, Ashley murmured, already visualizing how she could decorate it. Yes, but there are conditions, Olivia said, stopping in the center of the hall. First, this can't just be another boring corporate event. If we're opening our space for this, we want it to be something special, something that honors the artistic nature of this place. Ashley felt both excitement and apprehension. What kind of artistic elements are you thinking? Well, we were discussing the possibility of incorporating some kind of performance into the event, Olivia explained. Maybe contemporary dance or live music, something that elevates it beyond just speeches and networking. Nancy and Ashley exchanged glances. This wasn't a complication they had anticipated, but it wasn't necessarily impossible to accommodate. This would significantly increase our costs, Nancy observed diplomatically. I understand that, Olivia nodded, but it would also make the event truly memorable. And we have contacts in the local arts scene who could work within a reasonable budget. Ashley walked to one of the windows, looking down at the marina below. She could see part of the dock where Ryan had saved her 2 days earlier. The view was truly spectacular, especially with the morning light reflecting on the water. What kind of performance would you suggest? She asked, turning back to Olivia. We have a local contemporary dance company that's worked with us several times, Olivia replied. They could create something special for the event, perhaps incorporating the history of the construction company or themes of growth and urban development. The idea was starting to take shape in Ashley's mind. An event that blended corporate elegance with unique artistic elements might be exactly the kind of standout feature that would impress not just Robert Anderson, but all the other VIP guests. We'd need to see the dance company before making a final decision, Ashley said, and get a better understanding of the costs involved. Of course, Olivia smiled for the first time since they'd met. Actually, they have a rehearsal this afternoon. You could come watch. Perfect. Ashley felt a wave of relief mixed with nervousness. What time? 3 o'clock, Olivia answered. And Miss Williams? I hope you understand this is truly a unique opportunity. Normally we take months to decide on partnerships like this. Ashley knew Olivia was right. If they could make this event work, it wouldn't just solve their immediate problem. It could also mark the start of a new direction for her company. They returned to the office with renewed hope, but also aware that they now faced a completely new set of challenges. Adding artistic elements meant renegotiating the budget with Robert Anderson, finding ways to integrate the performance with the event's more traditional aspects, and ensuring everything would run smoothly in just 3 weeks. So, Jennifer said when Ashley recounted the morning's events, we're going from a traditional corporate event to an arts business fusion. Interesting. It's risky, Ashley admitted. But it might be exactly what we need to stand out in the market. And if it doesn't work, Nancy asked pragmatically, then we lose the client and probably several future ones, Ashley sighed. But if it does work, if it works, you might have created a whole new niche in the event industry, Jennifer finished. Corporate art, it has potential. The rest of the morning was spent refining preliminary plans and calculating costs. Ashley knew she'd have to call Robert Anderson before the afternoon rehearsal to lay the groundwork for the new proposal. It was a conversation she dreaded, but knew was necessary. Robert Anderson wasn't immediately enthusiastic about adding artistic elements to his company's event. Miss Williams, I hired you for a professional corporate event, he said over the phone, not a dance show. Mr. Anderson, I understand your concern, Ashley replied carefully, but this would be integrated art, not a separate performance. Something elegant that would celebrate your company's history and values in a unique and memorable way. There was a long pause on the other end. Explain this idea further, he finally said. Ashley took a deep breath and began to paint a picture for him, an event that would honor the tradition and stability of his company while showcasing its capacity for innovation and adaptation. Contemporary dance would be subtly integrated, perhaps telling the story of Miami Beach's urban development or representing concepts of construction and growth. "And this won't cost more than we originally agreed?" Robert asked. Ashley crossed her fingers. "We're working to keep costs within the original budget. There might be a slight adjustment, but nothing significant." "Very well," he said finally. "But I want to approve all artistic elements in advance. Nothing happens at my company's event without my explicit approval." "Of course," Ashley agreed quickly. "We'll present everything for your approval before finalizing anything." After hanging up, Ashley sank into her chair. She had managed to keep Robert Anderson interested, but now the pressure was really on her. The afternoon rehearsal would be crucial in determining whether this new direction was feasible. At 3 in the afternoon, Ashley and Nancy returned to the Harbor Arts Center. Olivia met them at reception and led them to a rehearsal room on the second floor. The room was spacious, with mirrors covering one entire wall and ballet bars installed along the others. "The company is preparing," Olivia explained as they climbed the stairs. "They're incredibly talented and have worked together for several years." When they entered the rehearsal room, Ashley immediately noticed the dancers' focused energy. There were 6 in total, 3 men and 3 women, all seemingly in their 20s or early 30s. They were warming up, their bodies moving, with the fluid grace of highly trained athletes. The choreographer, a woman named Melissa Parker, approached to greet them. She was tall and elegant, with dark hair pulled into a low bun and a presence that commanded instant respect. "Olivia told me about your project," Melissa said, her voice clear and confident. "It's an interesting concept, incorporating contemporary dance into a corporate event." "We've never tried anything like this before," Ashley admitted. "But we're excited to see what you can create." "Well, let me show you something we developed for a similar project last year," Melissa said, signaling to the other dancers. What followed was 15 minutes of the most beautiful, expressive dance Ashley had ever seen. The dancers moved as one fluid unit, their bodies telling a story of growth, construction, and transformation. It was powerful without being pretentious, artistic without being inaccessible. Ashley watched, mesmerized, her mind already imagining how something like this could be incorporated into Robert Anderson's event. It wouldn't just be entertainment, it would be art that elevated the entire event to a whole new level. When the performance ended, there was a moment of silence before Ashley began to applaud. "That was incredible," she said honestly. "Exactly the kind of thing we were envisioning." "Thank you," Melissa smiled. "And this can be tailored specifically to the construction company's theme. We can incorporate movements that suggest structures rising, foundations being laid, vertical growth." Nancy was scribbling notes furiously, already calculating how this could work logistically with the rest of the event. "How many dancers would be needed?" she asked. "For the space Olivia described, I'd say 4, Melissa replied. "Enough to create visual impact without overwhelming the space or competing with the other event elements." They discussed practical details for another 30 minutes, schedules, costs, technical requirements. It was more complex than a traditional event, but Ashley was convincing herself it would be worth it. "There's one thing," Melissa said as they were finalizing the details. "One of our lead dancers is dealing with an ankle injury. If they can't recover in time, we'll need to find a replacement." "How hard would it be to find a replacement?" Ashley asked, feeling a pang of concern. "Not impossible, but challenging," Melissa admitted. "Especially with so little time to rehearse, the person would need significant experience in contemporary dance and be able to learn choreography quickly." Ashley made a mental note to check on this in the coming days. For now, she was focused on making sure all the other pieces were in place. When they left the Harbor Arts Center, Ashley felt more optimistic than she had in days. They had a venue, a unique approach, and talented artists willing to work with them. There were still many details to iron out, but for the first time since the problem arose, she felt they might turn this disaster into something extraordinary. "You realize we've just completely reinvented our approach to corporate events," Nancy remarked as they drove back to the office. I know, Ashley smiled, and I'm both terrified and excited at the same time. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us out as we're just starting. Now, back to the story. That evening, Ashley was at home reviewing the preliminary plans when her phone rang. It was a number she didn't recognize, but something made her answer. "Hello?" she said. "Ashley, it's Ryan." The familiar voice made her smile, involuntarily. "Ryan Miller, from the incident at the marina." "Ryan," she stood up from the couch, suddenly alert. "How did you get my number?" "Not hard," he laughed nervously. "Williams Events pops up on Google when you search for Ashley Williams Miller. Hope you don't mind the call." "No, of course not," Ashley heard herself say. "Actually, I'm glad to hear from you. How are you?" "Good, thanks. And you? How are you feeling after everything?" "Good too," she said, walking to the window overlooking the ocean. "Truth is, I've been thinking a lot about what happened, and about you." There was a pause on the other end. "Me too," he finally said. "Actually, that's part of why I called. I was wondering if you'd like to have coffee with me to talk." Ashley felt her heart beat a little faster. "I'd love that." "How about tomorrow morning? I know a cafe near the marina," Ryan suggested. "Perfect," she smiled. "What time?" 8:30, he asked. "At Ocean Brew Coffee on Commerce Street." "I'll be there," Ashley promised. After hanging up, she found herself smiling in a way she hadn't in a long time. There was something about Ryan that intrigued her deeply, a complexity she'd barely scratched during their brief encounter. The next morning, Ashley arrived at Ocean Brew Coffee 5 minutes early, nervous in a way she hadn't felt for years. The cafe was small and cozy, with wooden tables and the rich aroma of freshly roasted beans filling the air. Ryan was already there, seated at a table by a window. When he saw her enter, he stood and waved, and Ashley was once again struck by his presence. He wore dark jeans and a light blue button-down that brought out his eyes, and there was something in his posture that suggested both strength and restraint. "Thanks for calling," she said as they sat down. "Thanks for coming," he replied, looking slightly nervous. "I ordered coffee for you. Hope that's okay." "Perfect," she smiled, briefly touching the warm cup. "So, Ryan Miller, tell me about yourself." She saw a shadow pass through his eyes, so quickly she almost missed. "Not much to tell," he said, shrugging. "I'm originally from Los Angeles, moved to Miami Beach a few months ago." "For work?" she asked. "Something like that." He hesitated. "And you? How did you get into events?" Ashley noticed he had steered the conversation away from himself, but decided to let it go for now. "I've always liked organizing things," she said. "Started with parties for friends in college, then events for student groups. When I graduated with a business degree, I decided to make it a career." "And do you like what you do?" Ryan asked, seeming genuinely interested. "Most of the time, yes," Ashley laughed, "though this week has been particularly challenging." She found herself telling him about the issue with the Anderson construction event, the search for a new venue, and the decision to incorporate artistic elements. Ryan listened attentively, asking thoughtful questions that showed he was really paying attention. "Sounds ambitious," he remarked when she finished, "but also exciting." "It is," she agreed. "Terrifying, but exciting. What about you? What do you do when you're not saving people in the ocean?" Ryan laughed, but she noticed that hesitation in his eyes again. "Right now I'm between jobs," he finally said. "Exploring options." "What kind of options?" She gently pressed. "Private security, maybe," he answered vaguely. "My background is more in protection." Ashley remembered Jennifer's suspicions about him being military. The evasive way he talked about his work, combined with his obvious physical skills, certainly supported that theory. "Protecting people?" she asked. "Among other things," Ryan nodded. "But enough about work. Tell me about you. Family, hobbies, what you do for fun." They talked for another hour, and Ashley found herself more relaxed than she'd been in weeks. Ryan was a thoughtful listener, with a subtle sense of humor that emerged as he grew more comfortable. There was depth to him, layers she wanted to explore. When they finally got up to leave, he asked if he could see her again. "I'd like that," she said honestly. "How about dinner Friday?" he suggested. "I know a small restaurant with a view of the marina." "Perfect," she smiled. "But let me pay this time. I still owe you a meal for saving my life." "You don't owe me anything," Ryan said seriously, "but I'll take the dinner." As they walked to their cars, Ashley found herself glancing at Ryan. There was something about the way he moved, always alert, always aware of his surroundings, that confirmed her suspicions about his military background, but there was also a vulnerability in him that intrigued her. The rest of the week passed in a blur of frantic planning for the event. Ashley and her team worked to integrate all the elements: the traditional company anniversary ceremony, the dance performance, the logistics of the new venue, and hundreds of small details that could make or break the event. Robert Anderson insisted on meeting Melissa Parker in person to approve the choreography. The meeting was tense, with the conservative businessman clearly uncomfortable with the artistic concept, but he eventually approved a modified version that incorporated themes of construction and urban development more literally. "I want to make sure this honors my company's tradition and stability," he told Ashley after the meeting. "Not some experimental thing that might confuse or alienate our guests." "I completely understand," Ashley assured, though internally she worried about balancing Olivia's artistic vision with Robert's conservative expectations. On Thursday, 2 days before the event, Olivia called with bad news. "The dancer with the ankle injury won't be able to perform," she said, "and we still haven't found a suitable replacement." Ashley felt her stomach drop. "How many people have you contacted?" "Everyone we know in the area," Olivia sighed. "The problem is we need someone with significant contemporary dance experience, who's physically strong enough to execute the lifts the choreography requires, and who can learn everything in just 2 days." "What if we modify the choreography to work with just 3 dancers?" Ashley desperately suggested. "Possible, but it would lose much of its visual impact," Olivia admitted, "especially for a space as large as the Harbor Arts Center." Ashley ended the call feeling like she was back to square one. After all the work, all the careful planning, they might have to cancel the artistic element that had become central to the entire event concept. She sat in her office, gazing at the marina through the window, when a crazy idea began forming in her mind. It was completely unlikely, probably impossible, but Ashley picked up her phone and called Ryan. "Hi," she said when he answered. "I know this is going to sound completely crazy, but do you have any dance experience?" There was a long pause on the other end. "Why do you ask?" he finally said. "It's a long story," Ashley sighed. "But we're in desperate trouble for the event, and I need someone with physical strength who can learn movements quickly." "Ashley," Ryan gently interrupted, "what kind of dance?" "Contemporary," she said, feeling ridiculous for even asking. "I know it's a strange question, but you have this physical presence and the way you move in the water. Where do you need me to be?" he asked, completely surprising her. "Yes, you'd really do this?" she stammered. "If you need my help, yes," he said simply. "Where and when?" Ashley gave him the address for the Harbor Arts Center, and they agreed to meet in an hour. After hanging up, she sat for a moment, hardly believing what had just happened. It was possible she'd just found the solution to her problem, or maybe created an even bigger one. She called Olivia to explain the situation. "You found someone?" Olivia asked hopefully. "Maybe," Ashley said cautiously. "But I need to be honest. I'm not sure if he has formal dance training. It's more of a guess based on other physical qualities I've observed." "Well, at this point, we're willing to try anything," Olivia sighed. "Bring him to the studio, and we'll see what he can do." An hour later, Ashley was nervously waiting in the lobby of the Harbor Arts Center when she saw Ryan walk in. He wore workout clothes, dark shorts, a white t-shirt and running shoes, and looked slightly nervous but determined. "Thank you for coming," she said as he approached. "I know this is strange." "Ashley," he placed a gentle hand on her shoulder, "you helped me realize something important a few days ago. If I can return the favor in any way, I want to." They went up to the rehearsal room, where Olivia and 2 of the other dancers were waiting. Ashley quickly made introductions, noticing how Ryan assessed the space with the same alert gaze she'd observed before. "So," Olivia said, walking to the center of the room, "let's start with some basic movements and see how you do." What happened next was one of the most surprising things Ashley had ever witnessed. Though Ryan clearly had no formal dance training, there was a natural grace to his movements that was impossible to ignore. His body control was exceptional, and he could mimic the steps Melissa demonstrated with a precision that impressed even the experienced dancers. "Are you sure you've never danced before?" Melissa asked after 20 minutes of basic movements. "Never formally," Ryan replied, slightly out of breath, "but I've had training in body control and movement." Melissa and Ashley exchanged glances. It was obvious there was more to Ryan's story than he was letting on, but at that moment, it didn't matter. What mattered was that he might actually learn the choreography in time. "I'll be honest," Melissa said. "You have the basic physical skills, but the choreography is complex. We'll need to work intensely for the next 2 days." "I'm available," Ryan nodded. "How many hours a day?" "At least 6 hours each day," Melissa answered. "And that's if you pick it up quickly." "Then let's get started," Ryan said simply. Ashley had to leave for a meeting with suppliers, but promised to return later to check on their progress. As she drove downtown, she couldn't stop thinking about what she'd just seen. There was something almost military in how Ryan had approached the challenge, quickly assessing the requirements, committing fully, and then executing without hesitation. When she returned to the Harbor Arts Center 4 hours later, she found Ryan and the other dancers still working. He had progressed much faster than anyone expected and was already performing sections of the choreography with a natural fluidity. "How's it going?" she asked Melissa during a break. "Unbelievable," Melissa shook her head in admiration. "He has a motor learning ability I've never seen before, and the physical strength to execute lifts that take most men months to develop." Ashley watched Ryan working with one of the female dancers, a woman named Emma. He lifted her with an ease that made the movement seem effortless, yet there was also a delicacy in how he handled her that spoke of exceptional control. "Is he ready for the event?" Ashley asked nervously. "If we get one more full day of rehearsal tomorrow, yes," Melissa replied. "It won't be a perfect performance, but it'll be good enough. And honestly, his stage presence will make up for any minor technical flaws." When rehearsal ended that night, Ryan was visibly tired but satisfied. Ashley offered to drive him home, an offer he gratefully accepted. "Thank you," she said as they drove through the nighttime streets of Miami Beach. "I know this isn't what you expected when you agreed to have coffee with me." "Actually," Ryan said, gazing out the window at the city lights, "it's exactly what I needed." "How so?" she asked. "Hard to explain," he hesitated, "but it's been a long time since I've felt useful like this, like I'm contributing to something positive." There was a melancholy in his voice that made Ashley want to know more about what was troubling him, but she sensed pushing wouldn't be appropriate, not yet. "Well, you're definitely contributing," she said. "You might just be saving my company." "I doubt it's that dramatic," Ryan smiled, "but I'm glad to help." When they arrived at his building, he hesitated before getting out of the car. "Ashley," he finally said, "tomorrow, after rehearsal, do you still want to have that dinner?" "Of course," she smiled. "Actually, after all this, you deserve a much better meal than what I originally had planned." "It doesn't need to be anything extravagant," Ryan said. "Just time for us to talk without choreography or corporate events getting in the way. I promise," Ashley said. "Just the two of us and a real conversation." After he got out of the car, Ashley sat for a moment, watching him walk toward the building. There were so many layers to him that she had barely begun to understand. But one thing was clear. Ryan Miller wasn't just some ordinary young man who happened to swim well. The next morning, Friday, the day of the event, Ashley arrived at the Harbor Arts Center at 7 to oversee the setup. The decor team was already there, transforming the space into something both elegant and artistic. The tables were arranged to create a central area for the dance performance, with special lighting installed to highlight the artists. Subtle blue and silver flowers complemented the industrial aesthetic of the space, creating an atmosphere that was sophisticated, yet modern. Ryan arrived at 9 for the final rehearsal, looking rested despite the long hours of training the day before. Melissa gathered all the dancers for one last run-through of the full choreography. Ashley watched from the back of the room, her hands clenched nervously. In just a few hours, 250 VIP guests would be seated here, including Robert Anderson and some of Miami Beach's most influential business people. If anything went wrong? But as the performance unfolded, her worries began to fade. The choreography had evolved into something truly beautiful, a visual narrative of growth, building, and transformation that was both artistic and accessible. And Ryan moved as if he had been born for this. "He's incredible," Olivia whispered, appearing beside Ashley. "Where did you find him?" "It's a long story," Ashley murmured, her eyes fixed on the performance. When the rehearsal ended, Melissa gathered all the performers. "You're ready," she said simply. "Tonight, do exactly what you just did and it'll be perfect." The rest of the day passed in a blur of final preparations. Vendors came and went, the catering team set up their stations, and Ashley triple-checked every detail. By 5 in the evening, she finally let them send her home to get ready for the event. Ashley chose a navy blue cocktail dress that complemented the event's color palette. It was elegant but not too formal, allowing her to move easily while overseeing the evening's activities. She made sure to pick comfortable shoes, remembering her fall from a few days earlier. When she returned to the Harbor Arts Center at 6:30, the space had been completely transformed. Soft lighting created an intimate atmosphere, and the first guests were already arriving. Robert Anderson stood near the entrance, greeting people, looking pleased with what he saw. "Miss Williams," he greeted her when he spotted her. "The space looks impressive." "Thank you, Mr. Anderson," Ashley smiled, feeling some of the tension leave her shoulders. "We're looking forward to tonight's performance." The next 60 minutes were spent on networking and cocktails, with Ashley circulating among the guests, making sure everyone was comfortable and happy. She noticed several people complimenting the unique venue and the event's atmosphere. At 8 o'clock, it was time for the formal presentation. Robert Anderson gave a speech about his company's history, thanking employees, partners, and clients. It was exactly the kind of traditional corporate speech everyone expected. "And now," he said, concluding, "you're about to witness something special. An artistic performance created specifically to celebrate the growth and development that our company represents." The lights adjusted, creating a spotlight at the center of the space. Music began to play, a specially composed piece that incorporated sounds of construction and urban development over a contemporary melodic foundation. And then the dancers appeared. Ashley had seen the performance many times during rehearsals, but seeing it in the full context of the event was a completely different experience. The choreography told the story of Miami Beach's urban transformation, starting with movements that suggested land being prepared, foundations being laid. Ryan was magnetic. Even without formal training, there was a presence about him that commanded attention. When he lifted Emma in a move that represented structures rising toward the sky, there was a murmur of appreciation from the audience. The performance lasted 12 minutes and received a standing ovation when it ended. Ashley felt tears of relief and pride prick her eyes. They had done it. Not only had they saved the event, but they had created something truly special. Robert Anderson approached her during the applause. "I must admit," he said, extending his hand, "I was skeptical about this artistic approach. But this was magnificent, exactly what I wanted to represent my company." Ashley shook his hand, feeling a wave of relief so intense it nearly made her dizzy. "Thank you for your trust, Mr. Anderson. Actually," he continued, "I'd like to discuss hiring you for the launch event of our new residential development next year." Something along these same lines, blending tradition with innovation. Ashley could hardly believe what she was hearing. Not only had they saved the event, but they had just landed what could be the biggest contract in her company's history. The rest of the evening passed like a dream. Guests congratulated her on the unique event, several people asked for her business cards, and even some of the other business owners present expressed interest in discussing future events. When the last guests finally left at 11 that night, Ashley found herself alone with her team, dismantling the final details. Ryan had changed back into jeans and a casual shirt, helping to stack chairs, even though he wasn't an employee. "You don't have to do that," she said, walking over to him. "I don't mind," he smiled. "It was an incredible night. Thanks for including me." "Thank you for saving me," she replied. Again. They finished cleaning in comfortable silence, working side by side. When everything was finally put away, Nancy and the rest of the team left, leaving Ashley and Ryan alone in the empty space. "So," he said, walking over to one of the large windows overlooking the marina, "still up for that dinner? I know it's late, but—" "Actually," Ashley joined him at the window, "there's a 24-hour restaurant at the marina that serves surprisingly good food." "Perfect," Ryan smiled. "Let's celebrate properly." They walked through the harbor area, the cool night air a pleasant contrast to the warmth of the event space. The restaurant Ashley had mentioned was small and unassuming, the kind of place fishermen and dock workers frequented. But the food was truly excellent, and more importantly, it was nearly empty, allowing them to talk without interruptions. "So," Ashley said after they ordered, "I can't avoid asking any longer. Where exactly does all that physical skill and quick learning you showed come from?" Ryan was silent for a long moment, staring at his beer. "I'm military," he finally said. "Or was. Special forces, specializing in aquatic operations." Ashley nodded, unsurprised by the confirmation. "And now?" "Right now I'm deciding if I want to keep being," he sighed. "I have an evaluation on Monday that will determine whether I return to active duty or get formally discharged." "And what do you want?" she asked gently. "Honestly, I don't know anymore." Ryan looked up to meet her eyes. "For a long time, the army was all I was. But my last mission, some things happened that made me question if I'm still cut out for that kind of work." Ashley could see the pain in his eyes, the emotional scars he carried. "Do you want to talk about it?" "I can't," he shook his head. "Classified, but I can say I had to make decisions that still keep me up at night." They ate in silence, for a few minutes each lost in thought. "And tonight?" Ashley eventually asked. "How did you feel up there performing?" A slow smile spread across Ryan's face. "Good," he said. "Really good. Like I was contributing to something positive, instead of what I usually do." "Maybe that tells you something about what you really want," Ashley suggested. "Maybe," he agreed, "but it's not like I can make a career out of contemporary dance." "No," she laughed, "but there are other ways to make a positive difference. You have skills that could help people in very different ways." They talked until nearly 2 in the morning, sharing stories, within the limits of what Ryan could discuss, dreams and fears. Ashley found herself more at ease with him than she'd been with any man in years. When they finally stood to leave, Ryan hesitated. "Ashley," he said, "I'd really like to see you again, but I need to be honest. My life is in a really complicated place right now. I don't know what's going to happen on Monday or where I'll be next week." "I understand," she said, briefly touching his hand. "But whatever the outcome of your evaluation, I'd like to be there to support you, if you want me to." "I'd really like that," Ryan said, squeezing her hand. On Sunday, Ryan spent the day mentally preparing for the psychological evaluation. He knew it would be a difficult conversation, digging into events he'd spent months trying to forget. But for the first time in a long while, he felt like there might be a future beyond the military waiting for him. The evaluation on Monday was just as tough as he'd expected. The military psychologist, Dr. Mitchell, no relation, was an experienced man who had assessed hundreds of soldiers dealing with operational trauma. "Sergeant Miller," the doctor began, "we're going to discuss your last mission and the events that led to your medical leave." For the next 2 hours, they went over every aspect of the incident that had traumatized Ryan. A rescue operation gone wrong, resulting in civilian lives lost that he felt he could have prevented. Decisions made in seconds that had lasting consequences. "And how do you feel about those decisions now?" Dr. Mitchell asked. "I still believe I made the best calls with the information I had at the time," Ryan answered honestly. "But that doesn't make the consequences any easier to carry." "And do you feel ready to return to situations where you might have to make similar decisions again?" Ryan paused for a long moment, considering the question. "No," he finally said. I'm not ready for that. And honestly, I don't know if I ever will be. Dr. Mitchell made a few notes before continuing. And what would you like to do if you're discharged from active duty? I still want to help people, Ryan replied, but in different ways, more constructive ones. After the evaluation, Ryan was instructed to wait for the results, which would be communicated within 48 hours. He returned to his apartment feeling emotionally drained, but also strangely relieved. For the first time, he had been completely honest about his limitations and his hopes for the future. His phone rang that evening. It was Ashley. How did it go? She asked without preamble. Tough but necessary, he replied. We'll know the results in 2 days. Want some company while you wait? She offered. I can bring Chinese food and we can watch something mindless on TV. That would be perfect, Ryan smiled, feeling a wave of gratitude for her presence in his life. Ashley arrived an hour later with bags of Chinese food and a copy of an old romantic comedy. They ate on the couch, watching the movie, her presence providing a welcome distraction from Ryan's circling thoughts. Can I ask you something? She said during a break in the film. Of course. If you're discharged from the army, would you consider staying in Miami Beach? She asked, sounding slightly nervous. Why would I stay? He asked, though he thought he knew the answer. Well, she turned to face him, your private security company could work here just as well as in Los Angeles. And I'd really like having you around. Ryan leaned in and kissed her softly, a kiss that was both a promise and an answer. If I'm discharged, he said against her lips, Miami Beach seems like a great place to start over. On Wednesday, the call Ryan had been waiting for finally came. Colonel Parker called personally to deliver the evaluation results. Sergeant Miller, said the colonel, based on Dr. Mitchell's assessment and your own honesty about your current condition, the decision has been made to honorably discharge you from active duty. Ryan felt a mix of relief and sadness. The army had been his identity for nearly a decade, but he knew this was the right decision. I understand, sir, he replied. Ryan, the colonel said, his voice softening, you've served your country with distinction for 9 years. This isn't a reflection of your worth as a soldier, but an acknowledgement that you need time to heal and find a new path. Thank you, sir. And Ryan, if you ever need a recommendation or reference, you can count on me. After hanging up, Ryan sat in silence for a long time, processing this new reality. He was no longer a soldier. For the first time in nearly a decade, he was just Ryan Miller, a civilian. His phone rang again. It was Ashley. So, she asked. Honorably discharged, he said. Officially a civilian as of today. How do you feel? Scared, he admitted. But also free? Want to celebrate? She asked. Or would you rather be alone to process? Celebrate, he said immediately. Definitely celebrate. They met at the same restaurant near the marina where they dined after the event. This time, the atmosphere was lighter, more hopeful. So, said Ashley, raising her wine glass. To new beginnings. To new beginnings, Ryan agreed, clinking his glass against hers. And now, she asked, what's next for former Sergeant Miller? Well, Ryan smiled. First, I need to update my resume. 9 years of military experience might be tricky to translate to the civilian world. Actually, Ashley said, a thoughtful look crossing her face, I have an idea about that. Oh, my company's growing fast, she explained, especially after last week's event's success. I'm getting requests for types of events I've never done before, including some that might have significant security needs. Go on, Ryan said, intrigued. And after seeing how you work under pressure, how you solve problems, handle emergencies, well, I think you'd be an incredible asset for Williams Events. As a security consultant? He asked. More than that, Ashley leaned forward. As a partner. Someone who can expand our services to include security planning, risk management, to even first aid training for large events. Ryan considered it. It was an intriguing idea, a way to use his military skills in a completely different setting. And would that work? He asked, mixing business with this? He gestured between them. I don't know, Ashley admitted honestly, but I'd like to try if you're interested. I'm interested, Ryan said after a pause. Very interested. They spent the rest of the evening discussing possibilities, planning how Ryan's experience could complement Ashley's existing business. It was exciting to imagine the potential, especially doing it together. 3 months later, Williams Miller Events and Security had become one of the most sought-after event producers in the region. The combination of Ashley's organizational talents and Ryan's security and risk management expertise proved invaluable for corporate clients. They had moved into a larger office overlooking the harbor, the very spot where Ryan had saved Ashley just a few months earlier. It was a constant reminder of how they'd met and how far they'd come. "Hard to believe 3 months ago I was drowning down there," Ashley said one afternoon, gazing out the window at the marina. "Hard to believe 3 months ago I was convinced my life was over," Ryan replied, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "And now?" She leaned into him. "Now it feels like it's only just begun," he said, kissing the top of her head. They had just finalized the details for their biggest event yet. A 3-day conference for a construction industry association with 500 attendees and complex security needs. It was exactly the kind of project that showed how their combined skills created something greater than the sum of their parts. "You know," Ashley said, turning in his arms, "I think we should thank that air conditioning leak at the Ocean View Hotel." "Why?" Ryan laughed. "If it hadn't happened, we never would have discovered the Harbor Arts Center, never would have incorporated dance into the event. You never would have gotten involved," she smiled. "Sometimes the worst things that happen lead to the best." "Like nearly drowning leading me to the man of my dreams," Ryan suggested. "Exactly," Ashley stretched up to kiss him. 6 months after meeting, they were planning not just events for others, but their own future together. Ryan had found a way to use his skills to protect and help people without the weight of military operations. Ashley had discovered that mixing love and business, when done with the right person, could create something truly special. And whenever they passed by the marina where it all began, they remembered that sometimes life's scariest moments can lead to the happiest endings. A year later, during the celebration of Anderson Construction's 2nd anniversary, this time a much larger event held at the new cultural venue they had helped establish, Ryan took the microphone during a quiet moment between presentations. "Exactly 1 year ago," he said, finding Ashley's eyes in the crowd, "a brave woman gave me the chance to discover who I could be outside of the uniform. Today I want to return the favor by giving her the chance to discover who we can be together." He knelt right there on the stage in front of all the guests and pulled a ring from his pocket. "Ashley Williams," he said, his voice carrying across the entire room. "You saved my life in ways you never imagined. Will you marry me?" Ashley's yes was heard even without a microphone, followed by a standing ovation that lasted a full 5 minutes. 2 years after the day she nearly drowned, Ashley Williams married Ryan Miller in the same Harbor Arts Center, where they had turned a potential disaster into the foundation of a new life together. The ceremony incorporated elements of contemporary dance, of course, with Melissa Parker choreographing a special performance that told the story of their love. And if you asked any of the guests, they'd say they'd never seen two people more clearly meant to be together, or a more perfect proof that sometimes the best things in life begin with the most unexpected moments. The end. Now tell us what you thought of the story and where you're watching from. If you have something to share with us, leave your honest thoughts in the comments. Do you think Ryan made the right choice leaving the army? We'd love to hear your opinion. Thank you so much for joining us. Don't forget to like this video, and most importantly, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other heartwarming stories.